Well, Steve, hey, I am so glad to be able to be with you and for you to share with us. It's a great honor.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I tell you, we have fallen in love with New Point 15 years ago when Katrina hit the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. New Point was there, and just this past week in Louisiana and Indianapolis, you were there with us as well. So it's been a great partnership for many years.
Well, great. Well, I would love for you to be able to share some of your story with us because I know when I first heard it went right to my heart. And it challenged me as a father, as a husband, as a leader, and serving God. And I know that you came out of the marketplace to lead a nonprofit and ministry, and I know that was a change. And so, just give us a little bit of your story and what brought you to be a part of 8 Days of Hope.
Yeah, thank you, Dwight. Sure. And I'll try to condense it. At 33 years of age, I left my house to commit suicide. I was an addict, and my marriage was a mess. I was out of control. We had just adopted our first son. He was about a year old. I was a terrible father, and my addiction was the only thing that I focused on, and I couldn't stop. And so left my house to park my car in front of a train track where a train came every single night, every night at a certain time. And this one night, it didn't come. And I felt like even then I was a failure. I couldn't even do that right. And long story short, the next morning, I realized my marriage was over and probably everything that I really cared about was over. But my wife was going to a Bible-believing church, and I asked her if I could go. And she said, yes, you can come. But as we agreed, when you come home from church, you need to leave. And I said, I will. And that morning, the pastor preached on Joshua 1:9. And he said, I feel like there's someone out there that feels like giving up. They're discouraged, they're terrified, and they feel like they're alone. Man, that was me. And I ran forward to the altar, fell on my knees, gave my heart to the Lord. God has freed me from that addiction. My last day of activity was January 31st, 1993.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Restored my marriage. My wife, who was and still is a saint, showed me a lot of grace. We went through some really tough times, but God was refining us and preparing us for something that we didn't even know was right around the corner. We have 5 kids now, been married 36 years.
That's great.
And so grew up in Western New York, moved down to Mississippi to work for a vinyl siding manufacturer. I had a fancy title for a fancy job, loved doing what I was doing, and loved that God had moved us to the most conservative part of the country, Mississippi, right?
Yeah.
Katrina comes and blows up the Gulf Coast, and my dad, who was living in Buffalo, called me and said, hey, Steve, let's go find a couple buddies and let's go help somebody out. I thought it was kind of funny because I'm probably the least handy person that I like to paint, but that's about all I'm good at. But I said, yeah, I'll do it. And the plan was 6 people, Dwight.
Wow.
And God sent 684 volunteers, including many from your area. And we rebuilt 84 homes in 8 days.
Wow.
8 in the Bible means new beginnings. And we felt like God was using us to bring a new beginning to people who were hopeless, who had given up. They not only lost their house, the school where the kids, their church, their business that they owned or worked at. I mean, it was crazy. So we left there very quickly. I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but when you see God move as much as we saw him move, we realized we had to form a nonprofit and we had to go back. And so that was 15 years ago. This December's 15 years. And over the 15 years, that arm of the ministry has rebuilt 6,100 homes.
Wow.
For $3 million of work, all for free, all in the name of Jesus. And I tell people all the time, I don't know if we're good or not, but he's great.
Right.
And this has been his since day one. It's still his. And we're honored that he allows us to be a part of it. So it's been a whirlwind. It really has been.
That's great. So talk to me a little bit about those first maybe weeks and months of the start of 8 Days of Hope. What was that like? Because I'm sure you're moving into a whole new arena and something that you've never done before.
Yeah, I was a leader in the corporate world. I mean, that was before that company was bought by Provia, which is a company right down the road from me that we'll talk about in a minute.
Right.
But when you start seeing God move, I'll never forget. We had $1,200 in the bank, and I didn't know why God was sending us $1,200 because there was only like 20 of us going at that point. And then I met with somebody, and they said, "Hey, I know you. I've been watching you. I trust you. What's the financial accountability you're going to have in place for this trip?" And I explained that our vice president, he's a big wig at a local bank, very conservative with money, godly man. And he goes, "Well, I'm going to give you another 100, and I expect God's going to do some amazing things." And I went to the parking lot, Dwight. I thought, wow, we're up to $1,300. I mean, God keeps sending us money. But man, he asked me a lot of questions about a $100 bill. And so I opened up the envelope, and it was a check for $100,000.
Wow.
And wow. Then at that moment in a parking lot at American Family Radio in Tupelo, Mississippi, I realized that God had some amazing things that he must want to be doing, because we didn't even know where we could spend that kind of money with 20 people, but God knew what he was doing. So, it's always been fun, Dwight. I tell some people that go to your church, Butch and Julian Price and Harold Dawson and John Himes and the Fireballs and so many others, leaders. We have 160 volunteer leaders with 8 Days of Hope, about 8 of them at New Point, maybe even more than that. Mm-hmm. But we often marvel that God allows us to be in the front row to watch him move.
Right.
I could share stories with you, Dwight. Then the world's eyes like, oh, what a coincidence, or like, how could that happen? But that's the God we serve.
Right.
When we're in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and we lose a $250,000 grant the day before 8 Days of Hope 9 goes to Cedar Rapids, and talking to all the leaders about, okay, guys, this is going to be a step of faith, maybe not Abraham, Isaac type of faith, but we need everyone's credit card because we need to buy some materials and we have no money.
Right.
2 hours later, someone else was going to donate the money. And it's not always been about money. It's about other things of how God supplies the equipment. We were in Lake Charles, Louisiana, Hurricane Laura, that you guys helped us to be a part of. Mm-hmm. We went down there. There was no power, none. We had to buy a generator, a $70,000 used generator to power up a church. We hadn't raised a penny yet. We didn't even know how we were going to get the generator from Illinois to Lake Charles, and God sent volunteers, a truck, a donor, a building, the equipment. So in 48 hours, we had powered up a huge church that would be our home and still is 5 weeks later. So it's fun watching God connect the dots.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. And one of the things that I say, and I see it so real in your life, and you're talking about being free from an addiction. I believe that we're all created for adventure, and we'll either create our own, which usually leads to addictions and destructions, or we get in God's adventure for us, and we're amazed and humbled and just on this incredible ride, and we see God, this God that we've never physically been able to see, but we experience him in ways that are just life transforming. And I see that in your life, and that's why I always love to connect with you. So talk to us, because I believe, Steve, okay, in the church, okay, as well as in all of the world, most people are bored. And so what happens is we create something to try to give us an adventure, which ultimately leads to an addiction because it never fulfills us. And yet when we hook up with God, it's amazing. That's why I always like hearing stories, because you've got some of the best stories I've ever heard of how God has connected and moved. So talk to us about that, and just the need of being able to be on God's adventure and plan.
There's a proverb about a man with idle time, right? I stay busy with my family, with my time with the Lord, with my friends, with ministry, because when I'm not staying engaged in what God wants me to engage with, sin's a slippery slope, and it happens like that.
Right.
And the minute you think that you're above that, Dwight, I love you. I've always loved you.
Thanks.
Church, we love you.
Yeah.
decision though away from having our legacy, who we are in the Lord, change just because of one stupid decision.
For sure.
And if we above that, we're setting ourselves up for that.
Right.
So I'll say this to that. When we went to Houston after Harvey, Dwight, 4,692 people came with us.
Wow.
They 50 states, 11 countries. And we did a baseball doubleheader, 8 days and 8 days, and there was one middle day, so we were there for 15 days. Mm-hmm. But in 15 days, there were hundreds who met Jesus for the first time. We rebuilt 808 homes in 15 days. One of your members, Harold Dawson, in 15 days oversaw the buying, the shipping, and the installing of 239 sets of kitchen cabinets.
Wow.
Now, Dwight, have you ever built a home?
No, not really. I've done a little bit of remodeling. That's been about it.
So when you remodel, there's curveballs left and right.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the pipe was there, right?
Yeah.
How about rebuilding 808 homes in 15 days? How do you raise $2.1 million for your budget in 44 days? How do you feed 4,692 people? How do you offer lodging for that many people? I tell people, I'm telling you, we're not the smartest in the room, but we serve an amazing God. Yeah. Why do we still try to put him in a box?
Right.
Brother, we did $15 million of work in 15 days with denominations setting aside their petty differences, coming together and being one body of Christ.
That's good.
Why? Because people decided to leave the sidelines. I don't know about you. I was a college athlete. I know that you have athletes in your family. You probably were one as well. I saw your son play some hoop a couple years ago. He's a good athlete. And, you're not in the game until you're in the game.
Right.
I'm not meant to be a spectator. When God created all of us, he gave us gifts. Some of us are administrators. Some of us exhort, we encourage people. Some of us can give resources. God's blessed us financially. Some are good with our hands. Some are good speakers, communicators, writers, website designers. Don't let the enemy tell you that you don't measure up. There's something for you, either with 8 Days of Hope or a ministry in your backyard. Talk to your team at New Point. Discover your gifts if you don't know what they are, and find a way to get off the sidelines. You might leave time with us tired. We just left Indianapolis last week. We're remodeling a facility for sex trafficking. More on that in a minute.
Right.
But I would tell volunteers, you might leave tired, but your heart's going to be full. You'll be changed forever.
Absolutely. And your faith becomes deeply personal, in your life, and that's huge. Now, I know the organization that you lead, and just what you're telling us. There's problems, there's pressures, there's all of that. How do you as the leader handle all of that? Because, I think there's times that we become afraid or scared because of the size of maybe what God's asking us to step into. And you've stepped into something enormous, making impacts that are unbelievable. So how do you handle those pressures, those problems, and even people problems?
Sure. Yeah, I told someone in Indianapolis last week, wouldn't ministry be easy if there were no people involved?
Yeah.
Right? But that's not how it works, because at the end of the day, God teaches us through his word how to handle conflict. And there's conflict. Right. There's conflict in business. There's going to be conflict in your marriage, conflict raising your kids, conflict at your job, conflict at your church. That is just part of the world we live in until he comes and gets us to take us home. So what we do, very simple. We start and end every meeting with prayer. We talk about Matthew 18. You can't be afraid to meet with someone one-on-one when in your eyes they've wronged you, or you're harboring ill feelings toward them. Some of the people I mentioned go to your church. They are my deepest friendships. Yeah. Have we had some conflicts? Even those great names of people I shared? Absolutely. My fault and their fault, right?
Right.
But you look them in the eyes and say, I love you, and I know you love me. I know you love Jesus. I love Jesus. But we're both hurting. Let's talk this through. Yeah. And there are times where we ask someone else to come and sit with us, or they bring someone to sit, so maybe we can talk it through deeper. And then there has been a time or two where I'll just look at a volunteer in the eyes and say, you know what, we love you. We've tried to work through all these challenges. it's probably us. Maybe we're not the best fit.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you're not gifted. Doesn't mean that you're evil or I'm evil. It just means we've been trying for 3 years, but gosh, we can't meet your expectations. It's probably on us. But there's other ministries out there that do things like we do too as well. And so, it's got to be good for everyone, not perfect, because it's never perfect.
Right.
Because we're good.
Right.
But when we believe in, and we just don't like move it over and ignore it. Matter of fact, one of the things in 2020 that I told our leadership team, 2019, we focused on two things. One of them was conflict resolution.
Wow.
I told my leaders for 12 months, we were not ignore the fact that God teaches us through his word how we resolve conflicts. And we did that, and we modeled that, and we learned, and I learned a lot as well. So it was a good adventure.
Great. I got another thought for you to be able to elaborate on. I mean, I know you got a great wife, great family. I know they're very, very, very important to you. And how has 8 Days of Hope impacted them? Because, I believe with all my heart, our kids look to our moms and dads to determine how big God really is. And is it something that we're just checking the box, we're going to church and we're checking the box? Or is this God really, they grow up and they go to classes and they learn about David and Goliath. They learn about Joshua, and the walls. And then they see such a small God in moms and dads that they wonder if they've been lied to. And I know that as you lead 8 Days of Hope, it's challenging, but how has it impacted your family, and you keep that perspective as well?
Well, I've heard a lot of great preachers preach, you being one of them. I do use this line a lot. The greatest sermon I ever heard is the one I saw.
Yeah.
I think we need to see Jesus in action. I want my wife and I to devotion with my girls that are still with us. And I want to be a praying family. I want us to step out in faith. I also want them to be on the front lines. So when Jesus moved, it isn't dad coming home from the mission field sharing a God-side story.
Right.
But it's them and their friends. I was in Houston. I saw a homeless man come to our facility, and we didn't help him with his home, but we gave him food, and we found him a place that he can get ministered to. I want them to remember that forever, because that's what they're going to remember more than that sermon.
Right.
They're going to remember when they saw Jesus in action.
Right. That's great. That's super. Hey, talk to me a little bit about, because we had talked a while back and want to reconnect on this, but just the whole sex trafficking movement that God has touched your heart with, and really is doing something amazing across our country.
It is amazing. Before COVID hit, sex trafficking was being seen and talked about in the news more than ever before, due to some things that had happened in our country with an NFL owner and some rings that were busted and some other things. COVID hit and some social justice issues hit. But with all that being said, sex trafficking may be backed up a little bit, but I have seen a reawakening through the church. So sex trafficking is real.
Right.
I want to let you know that is the fastest growing crime in the world. So 8 Days of Hope goes right after a disaster like we are right now in Louisiana with Hurricane Laura. We go 6 to 12 months later and rebuild homes for free, the 6,100 homes I talked about. Those are natural disasters. Well, this is a human disaster, and it's real. I'm gonna share something with you that every time I share it, my stomach turns and I get really emotional. The average age of a child that is trafficked in America today is 12 years old.
Wow.
That's the average. So that means for every 16-year-old, there's an 8-year-old. For every 13-year-old, there's a 10-year-old. And it's the fastest growing crime in the world. And traffickers are targeting your kids and your grandkids. It isn't just foster kids that run away. It's some of that. It's just not runaways. It's some of that. But it's kids who are being groomed on social media, on gaming sites. They're befriended on Instagram or Facebook or Snapchat, and they develop a relationship with someone they think is one person, but it's really another person. And so what we decided to do is we decided to Let me back up. My wife and I, 5 years ago, went to Taiwan. We adopted two girls. We're older now, right? So I'm an older child. And when I learned that a lot of orphans in Asian countries, the girls age out and they end up being trafficked. So our goal was to adopt a 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old girl before they age out. Well, we found a young lady. She was 11. She had a sister who was 10. So, of course, we couldn't do one without doing the other, right? So we adopted both. But when I met with the orphanage, I asked them a simple question. When the girls age out at 14, what happens? And they say, well, they go to the front door. I said, what happens to them? And that's when my life changed. Because a lot of my daughter's friends weren't adopted.
Wow.
It breaks my heart knowing that these young ladies and sometimes young boys, not only in Asia, but in our country as well, are being abused 4, 5, 6, 7 times a day, every day.
Wow.
And I think it's urged to start talking about it.
Absolutely.
Like you and the pastors of other churches that partner with us that we know, it's an uncomfortable conversation. It's not a fun one, but it's got to be had. Men, every time you watch porn, we contribute to this crazy crime of trafficking. We've got to take our blinders off.
Right.
And so we need to get into the game. And so what we've committed to, we're going to partner with ministries out there to offer them a free expansion, a free building, free remodeling. And so we launched last year. We went to Houston. Texas is the #1 state in the country. And again, don't think this isn't happening in Akron or Canton.
It is.
Don't think it's happening in Erie, PA. Don't think it's not happening in Cleveland. Yes, it's happening in New Orleans and Las Vegas, the places people think, but it's happening in every medium-sized city in the country, every city. So what we're going to do is for 14 days, even though our name is 8 Days Hope, for 14 days, we're bringing skilled people, and we're going to help a ministry expand for free. We just finished our 5th project. We're in Indianapolis, Indiana, which is really going to be our key partner long-term. Frank Reich is the head coach of the Colts. Him and Linda, dear friends of mine for many years. He spoke at 8 Days Hope 1 in Bay St. Louis. So we have deep roots with him. We just finished their national headquarters, and what we're going to announce with them in the spring, but I'll let you guys in on this. We are going to announce that not today, their organization in 8 Days of Hope, we're going to remodel, rebuild, or build a facility in all 32 NFL cities.
Wow.
We think that we serve a big God. Absolutely. And I've learned every time, even me, I've seen him move, I put him in a bigger box, but even then that box is not big enough. So we're excited. Next year we plan to Philadelphia, Buffalo, Mississippi, Nashville. We can't wait to see what God does.
Great. Well, I look forward to continuing our discussion on that. I want to ask you one other thing, because, one of the things that I've been talking to our church family about during the COVID-19, I believe that there's opportunities that make themselves available, and they have a shelf life. Mm-hmm. And when they're gone, they're gone. And one of the things that I've been talking to them about, and you just live out in an incredible way, and 8 Days of Hope is a great example and an opportunity of this, is let's don't be so concerned about going to church as much as being the church. Amen. And I think the key is, it's important for us to regather and to be able to have that. Okay, we want that, and to live in community, but we miss out when we think that's what Jesus called us to, when really he called us to be salt, he called us to be light. And we're asking the question, what's the problem with the world? We already know what the problem is. The question is, what's the problem with the salt and the light? And we're called to be the church. And I know that you believe that because you live that. Can you just talk to us about the importance of being the church more than just going to church?
Dwight, I would imagine that you realize that one of your main responsibilities is to equip the saints.
Right.
Equip the people that attend all of your campuses and all of your pastors, all your leaders. You're there in essence to equip the saints to be on the front lines for Jesus.
Right.
And New Point does an amazing job of that. Oh my gosh, I'm serious. I talk about New Point, and I'm serious wherever I go.
Well, thanks.
There's like 2 or 3 churches I talk about, and New Point's always that leading church I speak about, because your congregation gets it. Now, does everyone get it? Probably not, but I've seen enough where at the end of the day, I always tell the volunteers with 8 Days of Hope, be ready to be flexible. If you had told me in January that 8 Days of Hope would ship over 300,000 masks, 500,000 containers of hand sanitizer, that we would do feeding initiatives in New York and Mississippi, give away over $500,000 of food, and that now in the month of October, through partners, including New Point,
right,
we're going to be a conduit for over $1.5 million of food so the church could shine,
right,
so that people don't see 8 Days of Hope,
right,
but they connect it to the local church. We tell everybody, everywhere we go, we appreciate the nice words you say. Thank you, because you're very kind with that. We want to drive people to New Point. We want to drive people to the chapel in Buffalo. We want to drive people to that church in Pittsburgh, because at the end of the day, we're going to go on to the next thing that God leads us to.
right.
So a couple things, and I'll wrap up. First of all, you need to be ready to be flexible. If you say, we've never done it like this before, let's go, man. Or if you don't embrace change, watch out, because boy, when you serve with 8 Days Hope, we're changing all the time.
Right.
Secondly, I really believe that God is using COVID-19 to show the church that we should be, no government can fix this.
Right.
In the right. I don't care who gets elected on November 4th. That person's going to wave a wand and all this goes away. It just doesn't happen this way. But this is the perfect time for the church to shine. We need to be the leaders of this. I've seen this with disasters. FEMA comes in, they're great. They do a nice job. But who's there 2 years later?
Right.
And 4 years later? It's still the church.
Yeah.
And so, church, I want to challenge you. Rethink of how you're doing church.
Yeah.
If it's just going to that beautiful building in the middle of nowhere with that big thing in front of your church, right? What is that called? I forget.
Silo.
Okay, silo. That's right. That's what you call it.
Yeah.
All right, silo. But what New Point gets and what other churches need to get, and we all need to remember, the greatest sermon people hear is the one they see. Very seldom does God give us a chance to lead someone to the Lord by spewing out 48 Bible verses.
Right.
Usually they say, Dwight, I shared this with you, Dwight. I saw you at a high school basketball game, and I saw your son get robbed. He got robbed. I was at the game.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but I looked at you, and I just wanted to see how you were going to handle that, a minute of adversity. Brother, you were like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would be going crazy. He has got such good self-control. Now, maybe the next week you did, but that week you did. But to me, that spoke volumes about who Dwight Mason was as a person. Your son got robbed. It was at the end of the game. The other school was going to win the basketball game. You were leading pastor, and you were living it out. We, church, need to live out Jesus. We need to live him out. It could be making food. It could be going on a disaster trip. It could be cleaning the bathroom when no one's looking. It could be serving the homeless.
Right.
It could be sending a thank you note to your leadership team, letting them know that you love them. But let's live Jesus out.
Well, that's great, Steve. Well, I want you to know that we're honored to partner with 8 Days of Hope here at New Point, and we're thankful for how God is using you, and we look forward to continue to increase our participation. And on a personal level, I just want you to know I'm proud of you, and I'm thankful for you. And keep the faith, and you pray for us. I know that you do. I pray for you, and I love you, buddy. And I look forward to doing more projects with you. So thanks for sharing with us. God bless you. Give our love to 8 Days of Hope and all who are serving there.
And thank you, Dwight. And thank you, New Point family. You've been praying for us. You've been volunteering with us. And Pastor Dwight, you guys have been very generous in giving to 8 Days Hope over the years. You allow us to move on a moment's notice because there's some things we don't have to worry about because of your faithful support. So thank you, brother. Say hi to everyone, and I hope to see you soon.
Great.